Okay, what's up guys? Jay Martin here, CEO of Cambridge House, and my guest today is Gerald Celente, the founder of the Trends Research Institute and the publisher of the Trends Journal magazine. And this was a fascinating discussion. I really hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Every once in a while, I have a conversation on this channel and I'm left thinking, how did I get so lucky that I get to do this for a living? And this was absolutely one of those conversations. Now, Gerald Celente has been on the show before, but why I wanted to have him back on was because he's one of the few China bulls who makes a strong case for why he's a China bull. And what I'm talking about is frequently on this program, on my channel, I hear a debate, right? And we all hear this debate. Will the 21st century belong to the US or will it belong to China? And I hear a lot of strong arguments for why it will belong to the US, and that the civil unrest and the issues and challenges that we are facing in North America, and specifically in the United States right now, are growing pains as a young empire grows up. But this is just the beginning of the American empire. And I see that case very clearly. It makes a lot of sense to me. But I wanted to pick Gerald's brain because he sees it differently, similar to Jimmy Rogers, another China bull. Now, what we dove into as a consequence was the details of the Belt and Road Initiative and what the implications of this really are. Is this a China versus the US conversation, or is this an East versus West conversation? We talked about the demographic crisis, because this is the counterpoint to any China bull conversation is, yes, rapidly growing nation, massive population, but they're aging remarkably faster than they're gaining wealth. And so a large population is only an asset if they're A, wealthy, or B, productive. And if they're neither, it's a liability. And so there's potential that this is the future of China. And I wanted to get Gerald's thoughts on that, in addition to the challenges they'll face at the bottom end of the age demographic. They're failing to repopulate sufficiently. You could say that's the case. So I wanted to get Gerald's thoughts on all of that. But, we went way beyond this conversation and got into a lot of just crisis philosophy, investment philosophy, and what he's done mentally to prepare himself for black swan events, to capitalize on black swan events, to be aggressive and bold when others are fearful. Because we all talk about this, being the contrarian investor, and yes, sure, be bold when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy, and all of this. But to do it's a different story. To take that step when everybody else is stepping backwards, to be the one stepping forwards, is a lot harder to do. And people like Gerald have built a career and an amazing, successful life doing exactly that. And so we got into the nuances of his habits and his lifestyle and how he created the ability to think like that, because he didn't used to, but he's done a number of things and has a number of habits and practices that got him there. So anyways, this was a fascinating discussion. He got real riled up, as you could imagine. He does. And I learned a ton from him, as always. So I really enjoyed this conversation. If you do as well, please hit subscribe, turn on notifications, drop me a comment, tell me what you think. I also publish a weekly newsletter every Friday where I share my top takeaways and lessons from conversations just like this and plenty others. There's a pinned comment right beneath this video where you can subscribe. It's a free newsletter. I publish every Friday. I love writing it. I'd love to have you join the tribe. And if you are looking for the audio version, you can now find us under the Jay Martin Show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So, Gerald Celente, enjoy.
What I love to do is introduce the right people to the right people. I assemble the smartest people I can think of or reach out to carry that conversation, and that's exactly what I've done today.
Please give my panel a round of applause. Welcome.
Okay guys, Jay Martin here, CEO of Cambridge House, and I'm joined right now by Gerald Celente, the founder of the Trends Research Institute and the publisher of the Trends Journal magazine. Gerald, welcome back. It's good to see you again.
Well, thanks for having me on, Jay.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I love it when you can make the time. You're definitely a crowd favorite on my platform, so I appreciate it. And you know what? This episode, although I've had you on the YouTube channel before, this episode is going to go on my podcast as well. And so for any listeners, Gerald, who aren't familiar with the Trends Journal and what it is you do, could we start with just a quick highlight reel of how you spend your time and what it is that you do?
Well, I began the Trends Research Institute in 1980. We began writing the Trends Journal magazine in 1991. And we're political atheists. We look at the world for the way it is, not the way we want it to be. And the motto of the magazine is think for yourself. So each week, I mean, it's a weekly magazine. This week was about 158 pages, no advertisements, subscription based. You read what you want from it. It's all, table of contents. But we tell what's going on. And then we say what it means. And this is where we see the trend going, the forecast. And this is how you can either take advantage of it or not, but do what you wish to do. So we tell the story as it is without putting it into an inflection. And the very important thing is the system is called global nomic. And that means making connections between different fields. So economists look primarily at, economic data, and they're not making connections between different fields. So that's what we do, and that's what differentiates us from everyone else. So it's really history before it happens. We say, again, what's going on, what it means, what's next, and how to plan, prepare, and prevail. And just shortly, at a graduate school, I was running major political campaigns in Westchester County, which is the richest county in America. I was the assistant to the secretary of the New York State Senate at 26 years old. I designed and instructed American politics and campaign technology and taught it at St. John's University. I was the chief government affairs specialist to the chemical industry, killing environmental legislation at the height of the environmental movement back in the 1970s. And I was also the number 2 guy running a major trade association at 30 years old. So I've been on the other side. I've been with presidents, prime ministers, and princes. I wouldn't know what I know if I wasn't on the other side. And I started to grow up a little bit in my mid-30s and then started changing. And the reason I became a trend forecaster and started to see the future was when the Iranian conflict broke out in the late 1970s. Okay. And I had been reading about how the United States, the CIA, and the MI6 and the UK overthrew the democratically elected government of Mossadegh in 1953. And they brought in the Shah, because the Mossadegh had the nerve to nationalize what was then called Anglo-Iranian Oil and Standard Oil of America. And he nationalized it. Couldn't do that, so we had to get rid of him. So when the protests began in Iran, I knew they were real. And what they were saying is, get out of here, America. We had enough of what you... No, we're not leaving. We're staying. Don't you know who we are? We can do anything that we want. No, get out of here. And I saw millions of people taking to the streets. And while all the Americans were taught to hate the Iranians, and Jimmy Carter came back from spending New Year's Eve with the Shah and his wife and said, the Shah is the island of stability in the Middle East. And in the Bronx, we used to have a term, bullshit has its own sound. As this guy's going down. So I started was playing the futures markets in oil and gold. So as everybody became politically and stupidly engaged in the rhetoric going on, I said, what are going to be the implications?
Right.
And I parlayed a $5,000 bet into almost $750,000. I quit my job. I ended up losing most of it as I'm gambling away as a young guy, but I learned from it. And that's basically how I began the Trends Research Institute. It's not what I want, it's what is. And to look at things for the way they are, not the way you want them to be.
I love that. Now, I want to ask, just based on a few things that you shared, can I ask, Gerald, what were the key changes to your thinking that you went through in your 30s? I mean, that's such a resume to have accomplished in your 20s. What changed in your thinking process through your 30s?
Well, that was it. It was the Iran war more than anything.
Okay.
And I have a photograph of me and Ronald Reagan, me picking him up at the Chicago Hilton in 1976, 2 days before he's running against Gerald Ford. And he keynote speak. I put on a brunch with him and 16 of our board of directors, And I got to, from being with these people, you see who they are and how shallow they are. And their only interests are in themselves. So from a young guy, again, I voted for Richard Nixon in 1968. And the last 2 people I voted for was Ralph Nader and Ron Paul. In 2012, I voted for Ron Paul. Matter of fact, I'm going to be one of the keynote speakers at his peace conference in the war against us conference, actually, in Washington, D.C. on September 4th. So it changed my life was being on the other side. And then you grow up, you start learning things. And if I wasn't on the other side, I wouldn't know what I know. And you start learning. And I study every day. I read 6 hours a day of underlining the salient points of the story, sending them out to our writers. Then I put the trend forecast, what it means, the trend posts. So it's constant work. And it's, again, looking at things for the way they are, not the way you want them to be.
Yeah. And then capitalizing on what you believe may happen as a consequence.
Exactly.
Your $5,000 bet, which I love. I love stories like that. Now, a question for you. How hard is it, though, Gerald? I love the term political atheism. You know, how you started introducing the Trends Journal. How difficult is it to restrain from any bias? And do you have any habits or exercises that you or your writers engage in to protect that?
Again, we look at the people. Look who they are. How can anybody with a brain bigger than a pea look up to a little true dope you got up there, a little daddy's boy born on third base and thought he had a home run, a little nothing of a clown? How could anybody with a pair of cojones bigger than a mothball look at this guy? Look at the little jerk I got over here in New York, little Andy Cuomo, another daddy's boy. I'm going to rename the Tappan Zee Bridge after my daddy, and it's going to cost you about $20 million. Oh, then you got to redo it because I said it should be Mario M. Cuomo, and you forgot the M.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And then you look at them. Mitch McConnell. How can anybody look to this crappy shit and take orders from these people? Macron, a little boy with a little garçon, a little nothing. How could people look up to them? Merkel, Draghi. Oh, yeah, the Draghi, the bankster gangster. As an Italian, I'm ashamed of the Italians. They had Cinque Stelle, the 5-star movement, and Lega, the League. Oh, we're going to pull out of the Euro. We're going to pull out of the Eurozone. And they vote to bring him in as prime minister, the former head of the European Central Bank, the former head of the Goldman Sachs gang, that he was the head of the European division, the former guy that worked for the World Bank, the former guy that worked for the Italian Federal Bank, and you're bringing him in there? So how could people look up to these clowns? So it's as simple as that. If you're stupid enough to call yourself a Democrat, a Republican, a progressive, a conservative, grow the hell up. What is your life? Bigger than one thing? You don't belong to anything. It's as simple as that. How can anybody take orders from these little clowns? As a kid, that grew up in the Bronx, I was the smallest kid. All throughout school, I was always the first online. The bullies went after me right away. I learned how to fight right away. I was the toughest kid. I'm a fighter. You call these guys out, these little politicians, again, as we'd say in the Bronx, they wouldn't know whether to piss or shit. They fold like that. And that's what the people have to do. These little clowns forgot 2 words. Public servant. Got it? Got it? You work for me. Don't you talk to me like this. I'll tell you what profanity is. Profanity is calling these little jerks dignitaries. That's a dirty word. A dignitary? Oh, you're better than me? I'm just a piece of crap? So that's what's going on. So that's when I say a political atheist. And how the hell could you be so damn stupid? What have they? Tell me one thing that they've done so successful. Just tell me. Let's put hey, how about that Afghan war? Wasn't that a great one? Oh, Celente, you see, you should be calmer and talk in the language of a George W. Bush, another daddy's boy born on third base.
Right.
Thought he had a home run. Or be proper like the Nobel Peace of Crap Prize winner that everybody loved, Barack Obama. We need to get rid of that man Assad. We don't like who he is, and we don't like what he's doing to the people. And the same thing with that other guy, Gaddafi, Libya, the richest country in Africa, where the people had more rights and more social benefits than most countries, but you say it in a proper way and then murder them, bombs away, but do it properly.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, so much of what you're saying, you know what it reminds me of right now, Gerald, is I saw an interview you did with Porter Stansbury recently with my good friend Daniela Cambone. And just because of what you're saying right now frames, I feel like the way you look at the world, right? And it's you put in a lot of work to look at things from an outsider's view, right? To think independently and have that sovereign mindset. And it's hypercritical, and I love how riled up you get about this, because I think it's important that people wake up to a lot of the narrative that we're sold by mainstream media, and that's why publications like the Trends Journal are so important. You made a comment anyways on this interview that people need to think beyond just financial preparation, and you said they need to be physically, emotionally, and spiritually prepared and in the best shape. I think your words were in the best shape they can be, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and of course, financially. And that holistic approach is, I love that. I mean, that's what I try to take to the market or to my family life or my career, whatever. But what struck you to bring that line forward? What does that mean to you?
Well, it's my, the first book I worked on was called Natural Healing back in 1980s. I have an honorary doctorate from the National University of Health Science. And I also, I had my own school. I used to teach close combat for many years. And so it's whole health in all the ways. And again, learning all the time. So the mentally, physically, and the spiritually. Keep trying to raise above different. Look, I'm not the same guy I used to be when I was a young guy. The shit I pulled in my life. Holy Christ. I mean, really, nothing. I tell you, I used to work for the chemical industry. I was killing environmental legislation.
Right.
But in all the other shit that I did too, but you grow up. Mm. And that's why once upon a time, you used to look up to the elders because they've been around long enough to see what's going on. And so it's a continuing learning process. And do you think I want to spend my days reading all this ugly crap? You mentioned before we went on the air, as you said, are you in your house? This is my office. I have over 100 plants in this office. In my garden outside, I own 3 of the most historic buildings in America on the most historic 4 corners. I grow tomatoes, peppers, arugula, So I surround myself with beauty as an antidote to all the ugliness that I do. So I try to create as much beauty around me as I possibly can. I would rather water the plants and take care of them and then read all this ugly crap.
Sure. Yeah.
And I cook for myself. I love to cook and, it gets my mind off it. So I cook, again, everything is organic as much as I can. Mm. I even buy organic Bloody Mary mix. and organic celery. But anyway, it's a blend of everything, and it's not this is the way you must do it, that's the way you must do it.
Yeah.
No, it's a blend. But again, with the COVID war, when do you hear one mention from anybody in the mainstream media or the government saying get in the best physical shape you can get into?
I know.
Build up your immune system.
It's so frustrating.
Start taking all these vitamins. Start doing this. No. Only the vax. Only the vax will save you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been the most frustrating part of this entire experience to me is like, where is the advice to get outside, get sunshine, get active, take care of your health? It's something like 70% plus of the cases in the ICU are vitamin D deficient and have or obese. It's remarkable that we're not talking about that, and not to say it's not a serious threat, but there's a number of ways to approach it. And I think the foundational way.
It's not it's a serious threat to people with pre-existing comorbidities.
Sure, exactly. Yeah.
I'm not making that up.
I agree with you.
It was 94% of the people have 2.6 pre-existing comorbidities.
Yeah.
And so when you take out that other negative, you're talking no numbers at all.
Right.
And again, as we said to this in the beginning, how come they're not clamping down on all the chemicals that they're pumping into our food, into our water, into the air? Oh, you like those preservatives, don't you? No, I know you're the kind of guy that likes artificial flavors and artificial colors. Yeah. Yeah. We don't need any real. How about those GMOs? They're terrific for you. Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You just keep going on. Look what they're doing to us. Oh, only 6.7 million people die a year from air pollution. Oh, hey, how about what's going on there in Fukushima? Oh, they're dumping in that radioactive water back into the air. That's fine. It goes away. It just disintegrates. Oh, yeah, one thing after another. They're killing us in all the different ways that they are, and not a word about that. Again, the first book I worked on was natural healing, because of what they're doing to us. And, so I go on fasts. I do different things to cleanse my body. But, again, you mentioned the obesity in America. 40% of Americans are obese. 40%.
Right.
70% are overweight. 72%. You know that they used to have a saying, pigs can't fly. You been to the airport lately? And then we put in the Trends Journal, like this week and last week and the week before, Coca-Cola sales, Pepsi-Cola sales, McDonald's sales, all going up. Great, wonderful. And then we say what it means. Yeah, the sales are going up. People are doing. So look at the crap they're eating and drinking.
Yeah, it's horrifying.
Can't understand why you're getting sick. I can't figure it out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as a dad, I have 3 young boys, under the age of 5. And a lot of my friends and family think my wife and I are completely neurotic for the discipline we bring to our nutrition, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's not neurotic or complex at all. We're very simple. We eat plants and animals. That's it. If it doesn't look like what it was, question it, right? It should be identifiable. But to do that these days is to make yourself a complete outlier, right?
Yep.
It's amazing the friction we get at community events, parties, family gatherings, any of it. We're like, oh, your diet's really complicated. Like, no, it's as simple as it gets. Plants and animals. That's it. But it's front and center for me.
It's great. It's great when you train, because the only reason we are who we are is where we came from.
Right.
And how blessed I blessed my parents and ancestors, how blessed I am.
Right.
And my father taught me how to be a man as a little kid. And, you get in a fight with your father, he used to say to me, you little bastard. He said, you think I'm telling you what I'm telling you because I want you to be like me? I want you to become yourself. How many parents say that to their kids? My mother, before I knew what the word meant, a situation would happen. And she'd say to me, I hate cowards.
Okay.
And I learned what a coward was when I worked in the New York State Senate. Right. Watching grown men grovel to suck their way up to the top. I quit after a year. Nobody could believe I quit. And my father, when I shoot my mouth off, he'd say to me in Italian, "Papagallo, parrot, stop repeating what everybody else is saying and think for yourself." In a disgusting way, talk to me. And I realized before I open my mouth, I better have the facts. I better have the facts. And that's what we do. We put out the facts. These are the facts. And this is what we see happening from these facts. Okay. Whatever you think after that, fine.
Right.
But this is the way we see it. So again, we're blessed, and it's great that you're doing that to your children.
Thanks. Yeah, it's fun. We find it to be very important. Now, I want to. I have one more question that's sort of more philosophical for you, and then I do want to jump into some macro stuff and get into some more tactical conversation points. But prior to that, just pulling on some threads that you shared, I'm going to ask you for some advice, Gerald. If someone is looking to move past their past, you talked about working in a position where you were killing environmental legislation, transitioning to authoring a book called Natural Healing. How have you found success acknowledging things you did in your past career that you're not so proud of, but not letting that pull you down? Just dismissing it, moving forward. I'm a different person now. I've learned from things I did that I'm not proud of, and I'm going to do this now. And I'm not going to let that keep me up at night or define who I am or whatever, direct my future. Any advice or counsel?
It takes a lot of work. Again, I've done a lot of, meditation, do all of that kind of thing, and breathing. And so it's a process. And again, when when I start thinking about it, the things that I did that I shouldn't have done, It's okay. I did it. Let me move on. And now I try to improve it.
Mm.
And I think we're everybody. I mean, who's lived a perfect life? Oh, I know who. The governor, the senator, the president, the prime minister, they're perfect. But other than that little group. So, I mean, everybody pulls shit in their lives. So it's doing all of these other things. Again, as I said, meditation. And I've been practicing the martial arts since like 1982. So I've been at it a lot of years, and it's discipline.
Right.
So when virtually every morning, I wake up and I say, I have a routine I go through, an exercise routine and a workout routine. I say, I did it yesterday. I'm not going to do it today. And then about 20 minutes later, I could do the routine. Yeah. So every day I try to talk myself out of it.
Yeah, of course.
And then I say, okay, and then I do it. Yeah. So it's really that discipline. It takes discipline. And that's what it really takes. And by the way, I never had discipline as a kid. I ran away from kindergarten, across the Boston Post Road in the Bronx at 4.5 years old. And I was a great clarinet player. I didn't have the discipline to keep it going.
Sure.
So you grow and you keep learning. That's the entire key, is to keep learning. Keep learning and keep expanding. Like when I do research, every day I go to China's news, I go to Japan, I go to Far's news agency to hear the Iranian side, I go to Al Jazeera, I'll go to Haaretz, the Israeli. I just want to get what's going on.
Sure.
And then I'll decide what makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But it's learning continually. You can't stop learning. And that, by the way, that keeps you also, as the research goes, from dementia as you get older.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. I love that. You know what? I'm also a martial artist, and I love a lot of the practices and traditions and discipline I pull from that. And I apply it even to my portfolio. And I don't think that's crazy. I think it's directly related. Right. And there's something to be said about confidence. And that's what I take from martial arts. I've never been, an aggressive person by any stretch, but I just like to know that I'm good. And that affects my mental health and the way I approach people and handle myself.
That's right.
And what a valuable skill. Okay.
No, well, we'll just stay on that for a moment, because you're not afraid. You're not afraid.
100%. Yeah.
So when you're not afraid, you think for yourself. And that's the difference. And I went from Tai Chi to Okinawan Tay to close combat. And we have Bradley Steiner, who just passed away, who was a top close combat guy in the United States. And close combat's very different than all the other arts, because there is no form. You don't teach a tiger, a lion, a bird, a cockroach, a rat, a mouse. You don't teach them how to fight. It's natural.
Sure.
They took the fight out of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they took it out of us. Oh, we're going to have a no bullying zone. Okay. When you go to school, you have a no bullying. Grow the hell up. And that takes the fight out of the people. And that's what's going on now. The people lost their fight. The majority have lost their fight because they've taken the fight out of the people.
And what's the implications of that when you have a scenario like COVID over the last 15 months? A lot of businesses had their lights shut out. A lot of people had their incomes shut off, and you're left hanging. And it can either be, it was very destructive for so many people. And, I was so fortunate that I happened to be surrounded by a lot of fighters, to your point. And, one of my mentors called me and said, Jay, when the rest of the world's on their knees, this is when you need to kick the door down and storm the room.
You got it, man.
And I have that recorded.
Perfectly said.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very valuable and hard to do, though, right? Because there's fear involved in all of this, but interesting. Okay. I want to pivot now to some macro topics, some themes. One conversation, Gerald, that I often hear on my show is, who does the 21st century belong to? Is it the US or is it China? Right. And I think I could call you a China bull. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. There's one of our top trends. China's 21st century.
Okay.
Yeah, the business of America has been war. The business of China's business. Again, look at how much did it cost to fight the Iraq and Afghan wars? I mean, the numbers are like $6 trillion. Waste of money went. And again, you don't have to believe me. There was a guy by the name of Dwight D. Eisenhower, 5-star general, supreme commander of the Allied forces in World War II, 2-term president of the United States. His farewell address, January 17th, 1961, warning the American people that the military-industrial complex is robbing the nation of the genius of the scientists, the sweat of the laborers, and the future of the children. Right in front of your eyes. And what happens? Kennedy becomes president. Jack, you're dead. He didn't want to go into the Vietnam War. Vietnam War goes on. Then wars just kept going on. And what's China doing? No war. The Belt and Road Initiative, moving into countries all over the world.
Yeah.
Look at the infrastructure of America, the third world infrastructure of America. Take a subway in New York. It's a night in Calcutta. And how fast are those trains going in China? What, about 300 miles an hour? The average in the United States is the highest is 60 miles an hour. Look at the roads everywhere you go in New York. Boom, 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 boom. China put their money into building the country. And now they have their dual circulation policy, where they're becoming more and more of a self-sustaining society and relying less on exports. So they got 1.4 billion people. If 1.4 billion people start doing a lot of business with each other, we don't need you. And that's what they're doing. You're going to start seeing the big names like the Nikes and the others. They're going to start going away. And you're going to start seeing the Chinese brands coming in. It's total control of the government. The government's in total control. And the Chinese way, you will obey. And the people, they're into their own culture and what they're doing. So the Americans have given it away. They lost it. And also what they've done is they've killed the ingenuity of America by doing away with the antitrust laws. The Robinson-Patman Act, Sherman Antitrust Act, Clayton Antitrust Act,
sure,
and of course the Glass-Steagall Act. You know, before Jimmy Carter, you know, the peanut farmer, he was the one that started doing away with their usury laws. Bank of America, it was only bank, it was in California. It was intrastate banking, not interstate. So what they did, there were things when I was a young guy called stationery stores and hardware stores before Staples and Home Depot and Lowe's. They did away with the laws that allowed that to happen. So America's lost its ingenuity. And what the Europeans did and the Americans did when they brought them into the World Trade Organization, you look at China's GDP. It's a flat line until around 2001. Straight line up. They gave them all the high tech and heavy industry. They didn't know how to do it. They were making crap over there. The European and American manufacturers gave them, oh, and by the way, you want to open up over here? You only can become a 49% owner of it. You look at Volkswagen sales now in China, going down. You know why? Because the Chinese sales are going up. Oh, you gave us all that we needed to know on how to do this stuff. Now we got it all. We don't need you. So between heavy industry and high tech, the Europeans and the North Americans sold out their people so they could get the stuff made cheaply over there, bring it back, and raise the prices and make more money, more profits. Profit margin goes up when the level of workmanship is very cheap to buy.
Now, so a couple things there. I want your help to understand the Belt and Road Initiative better and the implications of that. And because it leads me to believe, Gerald, and you tell me if I'm on base or off base here, that it becomes more than a US versus China conversation. The Belt and Road Initiative and the relationships through Africa, South Asia, and the Middle East create more of an East versus West conversation. But we'll get to that. I can hear the comments firing up the counterpoints saying, okay, everything you said I agree with, but there's a serious demographic crisis in China. China's getting old before it's getting rich. In addition, the younger demographic is heavily disproportionately male and not repopulating as quickly as it needs to. So how do you address points like that, Gerald?
That point is a point that's valid, but you still got 1.4 billion people. So if it goes down to, let's say it goes down to, 1 billion. Now, what are we talking about against America? What do you have? 332 million?
Sure.
What do you have in Europe? 400 million?
Now, are
so
those?
You put the numbers together. Long term, but you don't know what'll change after that either. That's a temporary. It could be a temporary thing. But as the Belt and Road Initiative, who owns the biggest port in Greece? China owns it. Yeah. Right. And how about in Trieste over there? With the Chinese just came into Italy over there. Yeah. Right. And they're buying up all over the world. Farms all over America. So what they're doing is it's not only their country, they're going global. And they're buying the best that they can of what they think is going to be the future. So yes, if the population declines, but look at the population in America. It's going down.
Sure.
And it is very important too. America hasn't won a war since World War II. And they wouldn't have won it without the Russians. I know everybody hates the Russians, but take it easy. What was that Operation Barbarossa launched by Hitler in 1941? Only wiped out 30 million Russians and Eastern Europeans. 30 million. They fought and fought and fought. They were going into Germany before the Americans were going in. Eisenhower cut a deal with them. I'm making this point because America hasn't won a war since then. You think they'd win a war against China? And I was the keynote speaker at VMI, Virginia Military Institute, in 2000, after I came out with my book, Trends 2000, about New Millennium Warfare. There's a line, the generals are always fighting the last war. These ships, these planes, they're like fighting with catapults and horses. You have hypersonic weaponry. You got thousands and thousands of drones. You have cyber warfare. You have biological warfare. Nobody's going to go after China. China wants Taiwan back. Guess what? Nobody's going to stop them.
Now, so a couple of things, a couple of directions I want to go from there. First of all, what's the likelihood of a hot war? Okay, let's go there. No. So you think negligible?
No. Again, if it'll be the war that they asked Einstein, Albert Einstein, who knew a little thing about weapons, this guy, the atom bomb cat. They asked him, what weapons will be used to fight the Third World War? He said, I don't know. He said, they'll be using sticks and stones to fight the fourth.
Okay, that's daunting.
It's real. If we go into a war, it's the end of life on Earth for most of us. It's over. People forget. I'm born in 1946. I'm born right after the war. It's not ancient history, World War II. I bought these the buildings on the most historic four corners of America after I came back from Berlin on April 27th, 2012. Berlin was grander than Paris before it was bombed down. And I spent a lot of time in Paris, He used to date Marie-Pierre. And I'm saying to myself, why didn't the people stop this before it was all destroyed? Where were the people? How come they didn't? You're losing. How come you didn't stop it? And I came back and one of these buildings was for sale. I was looking to leave the country. I realized, I said, I can't run away. There are two-bit freaks everywhere. This is my country. Love it or leave it. No, you leave it. I wouldn't be me if I was born in Alta Villa Pina Vica Queds. I'm me because I was born in America and born to be free. That's why I bought these. Wars destroy. This is an ancient history that Europe was destroyed. And then before that, World War I, not too long before that. And then again, that's why, by the way, and when you make connections between different fields and going in a whole different direction, that's how they shoved the euro down the Europeans' throats. They came out with the generation older than me, came out with the BS that if we all have a united coin, then we won't have a war again.
Right.
So it was that generation that lived during that time that saw the hell on earth that they sold them that line. So if we have a war, it's a totally different war. It's a totally different war. It's the end. It's the Einstein, what he said.
Sure. Okay. And in a hot war scenario, which is terrifying, I guess I agree with you. I find it more likely because today our infrastructure is largely digital, if not moving that way. The services we rely on are digital. Even our utilities are moving digital. And so, isn't modern warfare, and we've seen this in the last 5-6 years in the US, the clandestine infiltrations, right? And of our election systems and our utilities, right? Recently with the pipeline hack in the US where the ransom was just paid. In a future scenario, in a future invasion scenario between two developed and powerful nations like China and the US, wouldn't this all happen behind the scenes? And wouldn't it be in the best interest of the aggressor to do this all discreetly in a clandestine way behind the scenes? And wouldn't it be in the best interest of the victim to ensure the population never knew this was occurring? Do you know what I mean? I guess when I think about modern day occupation of nations, I think it would all happen in the virtual landscape, unbeknown to the population as much as possible. Does that make any sense?
That would only be one element of it. That's what I was saying. That's new millennium warfare. That's one element of it.
Got it.
And if that element starts bringing things down to the bottom and you're losing big time, then you ramp it up into the hot war and other things start happening.
I see. Okay. Now, so we addressed the demographic issue. I understand the disproportionate populations. I feel like a large population is only an asset if it's productive. And if we have an aging population, could that become more of a liability than an asset, even though it's disproportionately larger in China?
Well, it's definitely a liability, for China. But again, it's not going to affect it for a while.
Okay.
And again, look at the number of people that they have. I mean, who have 1.4 billion here. Put the number in perspective. Let's go back let's go back 100 years ago. 100 years ago, how many people were on the planet?
I don't even know. 4 billion? I don't know.
Half of that.
Half of
2
that.
billion.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah.
Right. Now we've added almost 6 billion people in 100 years.
Yeah.
They got plenty of people.
Okay. And so then, think that forward, where is population growth going to come from in the future? It's going to come from the nations involved in the Belt and Road initiatives, no?
Yes. But again, the poorest nations are having the most children. South Africa.
Yeah. Which is the key continent. So describe to anyone who's not familiar, what is the Belt and Road Initiative and why is it significant?
The Belt and Road Initiative is, matter of fact, the reality of it is there. It goes back to the Silk Road, the whole back then when the Silk Road connected all the vital points from Europe to Asia. And you did all the trade through there. Now, China has a rail system from China to Europe direct. That's the Belt and Road Initiative. Building Belt and Road, building, whether it's through rail, through shipping, whatever it might be, it's a connection. Connecting from China to all over the world. And that's what they're doing. And they're going to continue to do it. And what they're doing is they're financing these other countries that can't afford it and driving them deep into debt. That's a whole nother thing. Yes. But that's part of the game. But now you owe me money, so you got to do more of what I'm telling you to do.
Right.
And that's happening in another number of African countries.
And similar to the initiative with the Greek port, right? It's very
and then the other parts of the Belt and Road Initiative is we're looking at, again, 21st century development and all of those resources that have not been taken out of the land yet in Africa that China's exploiting, like the Europeans did before that. I think the word they used to use was more proper word, colonization.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at France. Look what France has done. Oh, isn't it great too? Hey, those Algerians, you must be happy with all those atomic bomb tests they did in your country over there, huh? Yeah. I mean, it's been going on for centuries. Look at Belgium, what they did to, Rhodesia, on and on and on and on and on. It's one. So now this is just another level of that, but they're trying to do it in a way where both sides will benefit.
Okay. And Biden's answer to this is, if I'm correct, it's the International Development Corp. Are you familiar? It's like it's like a smaller scale initiative to buy up assets, infrastructure. What are your thoughts on that?
Nothing. He'll go nowhere, do nothing. They're gone. They're again, show me anything. One thing that they've been successful at. Right.
And so for context, and correct me if I'm off base here, Gerald, what this is, it's a relatively small fund. I think it's under $100 billion. So relative to the Chinese, and they're purchasing decrepit porting infrastructure, shipping infrastructure in order to regain control and compete with, I guess, what China's doing right now, which is purchasing infrastructure to gain influence over key points of the globe.
Yeah, nothing. $100 billion. How much?
It's like 60 billion, I think.
Yeah, 60 billion.
I don't want to.
Yeah, 60 billion. So let's say, as I said, how much? When you look at the defense budget of America, and you put in the intelligence sectors, CIA, Homeland Security, intelligence, by the way, an oxymoron. There's no intelligence there at all. You're over $1 trillion a year. What are you talking about? $100 billion.
Right.
What do you mean? You mean what? Half of what Bezos is worth?
Right. Yeah.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
It's nothing. And it's spent out over years. All that does is enrich the criminal group that they're a part of. They shove it off to their buddies. George Carlin, the great comedian, may rest in peace. And I know his brother, Patrick. He doesn't live far from me. George Carlin used to say, it's one big club and you ain't in it. That's all this is going to do. It puts money in their buddies' pockets and they shove it back to them. Oh, this is for my campaign. Oh, I got a better one. This is for my new foundation that I'm starting. The money just flows back and forth. Look at Pfizer. Pfizer gave Biden $1 million for his inauguration to help him celebrate getting elected. How damn stupid can anybody be? And that was the maximum they could give them. So that's where that money's going. It's not going anywhere. It's going into their buddies' pockets. Again, a revolving door. And when I say a revolving door, it's one door. Look at the little clown that used to be the head of the Food and Drug Administration in the United States under Trump, Scott Gottlieb. Yeah, how about Scott, piece of crap, is now on the board of directors of Pfizer? Who the hell are you talking to? You scumbag. Food and Drug Administration? And now you're with Pfizer on the board of directors Oh, no, that doesn't make any difference. Why? What would make you think that I would do anything in the favor of the big chemical company, drug companies? And by the way, there are 4 groups running the world. Number 1, I talked about it, the military intelligence industrial complex. Number 2, the banksters. Remember the too big to fail?
Of course.
Yeah. $29 trillion, $29 trillion, according to the Levy Institute, Bard College, that the banksters shoved into the banking system to build them up after they did all these dirty deals that brought them down in 2008. Number 3, people call them big pharma. Grow the pharma up. I can't use the word here because but it starts with an F. They're drug dealers. They're drug lords. Hey, look what just happened with that opiate thing, huh? The Johnson & Johnson, how much do they have to pay? They're drug dealers. Number 4, high tech. We'll tell you what to say. You will only say what we tell you to say. If you don't say what we tell you to say, then you're not going to be able to say it. We are in control. We're the monopoly that owns it all. High tech, drug lords, banksters, and murderers. That's who's in charge of a country near you.
Okay, I want to drill into that a little bit. Let's talk about high tech, because what you just said resonates deeply with me, specifically as a content creator. I mean, I'm conscious that I put out the wrong video and it disappears. So, I've always had, I guess, libertarian philosophies when it comes to entrepreneurship. You take the risk to grow something, you decide what you do with that thing. But now we're at a point where big tech, high tech, they operate like utilities. They're communication platforms. They're fundamental necessities to running a business. You can't run a business today without a presence on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. The same as you go back 30 years, you couldn't run a business without a telephone. You needed a phone number, right? So you and AT&T had to have a good relationship, and they were a utility company. Now we're at a place. Do you think big tech will eventually begin to be regulated like utility companies, or what are your thoughts there? And because the censorship argument terrifies me.
Not under the system that we have now, because they're all paid off and bought off. I agree. I have a libertarian philosophy, but I also believe in rules and regulations. And yeah, you don't give everything to the rich. What was that thing? Off with their heads? I mean, what was that happened in France one time? Something when the people didn't have anything and a few had everything. Right. And that's what's happening now. The billionaires got $8 trillion richer during the COVID war since it began. And so go back to the 1994, 93, when tech just started to happen. It was all about the internet was free and open for everybody. Free and open. The newspapers were so damn stupid, they put their information up there for free. And that's what killed it. That was the philosophy. The internet was free and open to anybody. It was the new way to be who you wanted to be and say what you wanted to say. And now it's under total control. And what I'm saying is that I don't see it being broken up to any significant level as long as the current administrations are in place in a country near you. Okay. The Western ones, forget it. Ain't gonna happen. They'll throw out things saying, oh, look what we did, but it'll mean nothing. Because they're all part of it.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing a different angle. And I don't like that because this is very, very scary to me how censored our media has become and how untrustworthy our media has become. But it's hard to see a way out at this point.
I can tell you the way out.
What's the way out?
The way out is for the people with money that care. to put their money where their heart and soul is, if they really care, and start a competitiveness against a Facebook, a Google, and a Twitter. Because there's never been a better on-trendpreneur opportunity than a new digital world right now. Never.
Sure. Right.
So, but it takes money to do it. And that's the way, to me, would be the best way for it to change. Competition.
Always.
You knock these guys out. Look at that little sucker bird. Look at that little piece of freaky crap. Oh no, maybe Dorsey's your kind of guy. I like Cook. Look at him. Look at him. You can't beat these people. Who's that guy? Starts with a P, the guy from Alphabet. Freezer, I keep forgetting his name. The Indian guy. A little skinny nothing. Look at him. So that's how it changes. But the people, you need the money to do it. You need the money to do it. You need the money to do it. And if the people united under an umbrella and everybody threw in 100, 1,000, 3,000, 200, 5,000, 7,000, 20,000, 60,000, 1 million, and you got yourself, $100 million, you could start to get them out. Because people looking for a new way, they're looking for freedom. Freedom. And I say that, I'm not making this line up when I say people have to come together. United we stand, divided we fall.
Okay, look, Gerald, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I want to thank you because sometimes I have conversations on my channel where I just find myself being incredibly grateful that I get to do this for a living. It's like sort of hard to imagine that this is what I get to do, and this has been one of those conversations. So thanks so much for your time. It's been just great having you back on, and you allowed me to push the conversation wherever I wanted, and you went there with me. So I really do appreciate that. And thanks again.
Well, thank you. And again, my heart, I'm a visionary, and I've been at this a lot of years. And I say to people, if you have, show me your books, your magazines, tell me what you've been doing over the years as being a visionary, and let's begin to talk. Because I see what the future looks like, and if we don't change it, it's going to be more of hell on earth, and we have to change that. And if we don't, we lose.
I agree.
And one thing very important: it does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men," said Samuel Adams. And the people that are tuned in are that irate, tireless minority.
That's an amazing quote. An irate, tireless minority.
Keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. And now you're hearing all these little pieces of scum crap politicians saying you get freedom. They're using the word. You get freedom if you get vaccinated. They're saying that. Mm-hmm. They use that word. Biden just came out with it a couple of days ago. Merkel, Macron, Johnson, everyone. They're saying freedom comes with a vaccination. Can you imagine the founding fathers of America saying that?
No, I cannot. Yeah.
So when I cry, it's because I feel it in my heart. And if we don't do something, it's not going to be, your children are not going to be the kind of place you want them to grow up in. So thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Absolutely. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit subscribe. I'd love to have you on the team. And if you want to take the next step and go a bit deeper with my content, I publish a free weekly newsletter every Friday where I debrief my portfolio. I distill the top lessons I've uncovered from the guests I've had on this show every week. And I talk about sectors and industries that I think are poised to move, areas I'm looking for opportunity, and places that I'm allocating capital. I love writing it. We publish every Friday. The link is right beneath this video. Love to have you join the tribe.